Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Greg said to me before the show started, he said, what a way to cap off a great Sunday of football with a terrible game. But I disagree. I like these games on prime time. I mean, I agree it's not a good game. But from a DFS standpoint, and more specifically from a betting standpoint, I really like this game tonight. There are so many interesting wrinkles here. We're going to get into them. You guys are probably already aware of some of those, but I think there are a lot of ripple effects we could talk about, not just in the betting space, but as far as DFS goes, and a lot of overlap there as well. So let's dive into it. As always, glad to have you guys here. Hopefully you had a nice weekend, but I must ask, humbly, atone for your sins this fine morning. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below if you haven't done so yet. Watching after the fact, pop in, say what's up. And if you're listening in podcast form, we know you're out there. Greg and I try and accommodate you guys as well. And if you think we do a decent job, leave us a rating and a review in the podcast on top of it. Anyway, what's up, brother? How we feeling?
Yeah, that was, I don't remember every single week of the entire year, but I think that yesterday was the best week we've had in terms of beginning to end of the day. It was all good games. Not that every single individual game was good, but there was, and a lot of this too is because we had 13 games. No teams were on bye, so we did get a bigger sample size. But one thing's for sure, the NFL should be separating the morning and, I should say the 1 o'clock and the 4 p.m. waves. We should have more 4 p.m. games more regularly, because yesterday we had really good games in the 1 p.m. window. We had really good games in the 4 p.m. window. The Sunday Night Football game ended up being really good. And that was one of the things that made it such a good day, is that there was good games to watch throughout the day. There was really fun storylines like Phil Rivers, you and I were talking about before. It was complete nonsense that he's starting an NFL game. I love it. 5 years out of retirement. But it was really fun to watch. And there was something that was just, it was so different that it was just interesting and captivating. So yesterday, that was start to finish of the games. That was, I was tuned in the entire time on Red Zone.
It was awesome. Everyone was so upset about them bringing Phillip Rivers back. Like, oh, this is horrible idea. It's malpractice. It's this. Like, who cares? I'm all about it, man. I was texting back and forth with buddies of mine, like, yo, I would love to see Phillip Rivers win this game when they were down in the final couple minutes. I mean, if he was the architect, not only of getting them in the field goal position, but then another drive after Seattle kicked that go-ahead field goal, would have been the greatest storyline of the year, man, because it wouldn't have just been a down and out team that had no chance. It would have been a team that, is maintaining almost pace in the NFC or in the AFC South. So I was all about it. Disappointed to see they lost. But then at the same time, there's a part of me that thinks this Seattle offense is just a paper tiger. Their defense is very good, but outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba at this point, somebody tweeted me, I think it was Bill Bleak. He's like, can we stop playing Kenneth Walker now? I told you guys not to do it, even though I was. Yeah, maybe, honestly. But get ready, because you got a Thursday showdown against the Rams. You're going to have to make some – watch. Kenneth Walker rips off 3 touchdowns in that game. I don't know. It's it's fun. Now, it's funny you say that, though, because there were also a lot of games that were just terrible, too. Like the Eagles – my father-in-law and I were watching the game. We flipped out of the Eagles game at the start of the fourth quarter and just went over to Bills Patriots, which was another great game. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get good games on every single game, but there were also there were a lot of blowouts, but then some games that stayed super competitive and super good. Yeah, Spicy Chipotle, or no, what was it? Movie Walker fools the Sims every week. It's not fooling this. If you looked at his props, like his props were still good. He was still minus money to score, right? And this isn't me. I promise you, this isn't revisionist history. I just said I might be fully off. But like it's not just that. He 14.5 rushing prop, 77.5 rushing plus receiving at 5,600, minus 105 to score. He's just no good, man. Also, the amount of times he got hit behind the line of scrimmage, I don't know. But either way, it was a good week. And I actually think this is a fun game, Greg. I like these games where it's not Rams Lions on prime time, where you can play like two good players and that's it. I prefer these type of spots today, and I think there's a lot to dig into.
Yeah, it'll be a game where there's definite things to unpack here, but yeah, you know what should have happened? This wouldn't have been possible. Phillip Rivers flexed to Monday Night Football. That would have been sick.
Dude, yeah, that would have been pretty fun. But to be fair, like, it was a horrible offensive game for the Colts. It was a great game. I enjoyed it. I watched most of it. Oh, yeah, Black Bolt Ace. And as you guys know, on Monday, we'll get into it in a second, but we got to hit a couple things here. Tomorrow's show with Ben and myself, first look going into the next week, we'll recap as well. The Bengals getting shut out at home was crazy. I mean, especially given that the Ravens defense has not been a juggernaut at all this season. I've said a lot. I think they're better than we saw earlier in the year when they had all those injuries and like Stroud throws for 5 touchdowns and they lose 41-7 or whatever. But nah, that was a pretty shocking development there. And you know, the other thing, it's not like Baltimore's offense was that good, Greg. They had a 95-yard interception touchdown. There was one like Rasheen Ali, and it was just so many points, so many fantasy points for the Baltimore Ravens yesterday were 100% entirely useless. That whole game. Jamar Chase had a fine game, but outside of that, like, who was worthwhile at all? I guess Flowers scored, right? Flowers had a good game.
Yeah, Flowers had a pretty good game. He had 68 yards and a touchdown. Henry did have 100 rushing yards, but that doesn't really mean all that much because Derrick Henry doesn't catch passes and didn't score. Like, if Derrick Henry has a good fantasy game, it almost has to come with multiple touchdowns because even 100 rushing yards doesn't mean anything when he doesn't end up scoring. So, yeah, overall for that game, Chase Brown was okay, actually, because he had 7 catches for 37 yards and a bunch of rushing yards also. But yeah, Joe Burrow sucked yesterday. It is kind of funny that the Ravens lost, the Bengals lost 24-0, and they had the 2 best fantasy players in the game.
Insane performance from them. Brandon Bowser, Lavi, Trevor Lawrence was a beautiful call. ETM was easy money as well. Yeah, you know, it's funny too, because I had, Ben and I talked about it, and yeah, thanks, Goody. But look, I got plenty wrong yesterday too. We talked about Trevor Lawrence as maybe a way to get different on that slate. I just didn't have enough Trevor Lawrence with ETN is the problem. Like, I had a ton of Travis ETN, and I was overweight to Lawrence. I just didn't have enough of them together on that perfect, you know, like that would have been it, right? Because 2 of those passing touchdowns were to Travis Etienne. Mm-hmm. And Etienne didn't have a good game on the ground at all. He did nothing on the ground at all. So outside, I think he had 1 rushing touchdown, but the yardage totals weren't there. So yeah, another crazy game.
And what's funny is the best lineups yesterday, if just by optimal fantasy points, it would have been Lawrence, but because his stack partners basically all sucked yesterday, I'm fairly sure all of the top 5 lineups in the Millie Maker yesterday were Jared Goff stacks, not because he scored more fantasy points than Trevor Lawrence. He scored 20 less fantasy points than Lawrence, but just stacks with him were easier to build in a more sensible way because the top end Jared Goff lineups, it was Jared Goff with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, and then you ran it back with Puka Nacua. That was a really reasonable stack that scored so many fantasy points yesterday, where Trevor Lawrence, you kind of would have had to have had him naked or just had a single stack with ETN, which would have been hard to come by.
For sure. And by the way, you're right, Josh. All 3 Travis Etienne had 3 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
I thought he had 2 and 1 rushing, but he didn't. He had 3 receiving touchdowns. So yeah, that stat combo was insane. Anyway, let's dive into it. I'm telling you, I am a little bit excited for this slate. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-point favorites at home. We generally know how that ends. 42.5 point total. I think there are 3 very important storylines for this game, and I'm going to walk you guys through them one by one, Greg. Number 1, Tua Tagovailoa can't play in cold weather. I don't buy it. I've said that a lot. I don't buy it. They're 0-5 in games where he's played below freezing temperatures. If you look at the games, one was against the Chiefs at Arrowhead when it was like people were losing limbs in the stands of that game. People were just dying. It was like they were on top of Mount Everest. right? In that game the other year in Arrowhead in the playoffs, and people were urging them not to play it because it was -10 with a -30 wind chill or whatever. So, okay, damn, he lost against the Chiefs team that won the Super Bowl that year. Tough break. He lost in Tennessee in 2021 in a super cold game with like a wintry mix. The Titans were 12-5 that year under Vrabel. He lost in Green Bay at Lambeau on Thanksgiving Day last year, and still ended up being in the Millie Maker winner lineup. And then he lost twice in Buffalo. So I don't know how much to take away from that. The other storyline is that TJ Watt has a partially collapsed lung and is out because of dry needling session punctured his lung. In the games that he has missed, the Steelers are 1-10 in the 11 games that TJ Watt has missed. 1-10. And then here's one more storyline that I'm going to throw out there. Derek Harmon was the 21st overall pick for the Steelers this year. Derek Harmon hasn't had his name said much. There aren't a ton of accolades, but his impact on the run defense has been significant. In the 4 games he's played this year, or missed this year, the Steelers are allowing 191 rushing yards per game. In the 9 games he's played, they're allowing 96 rushing yards per game. And the Miami offensive line run blocking has looked way better, and Devon Achane has been dominant on the ground. So I do think there is a real path here where you say, all right, we don't need Tua to chuck it 40 times. They don't have the pass rush in without TJ Watt. If Harmon misses and he only logged a limited practice on Saturday, does the run defense stink? There's a lot of moving pieces here. And I look at this and I'm not really all that worried about the Dolphins because it's cold out.
Yeah. And I mean, the other part of this too is while Aaron Rodgers has played a ton of games in the cold, he is also very old at this point. He's nursing a handful of injuries. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is going to react all that well to getting hit a handful of times, considering the amount of injuries he's had this season and previous seasons as well. His age, they're just kind of this foregone conclusion that, well, Aaron Rodgers, he should be fine in the cold. Maybe. I don't know that this circumstance is the same as previous years in his career.
Yeah, me neither. Now, Dolphins have no pass rush, but I don't know if the Steelers are going to have much of a pass rush either. You remove TJ Watt from that defense, it's not good. Like that's a problem. You love Mike Tomlin in games like last week where he's a 5.5-point road dog in a divisional spot as a 3-point favorite here. Yeah, I don't know. Dwayne, can the Dolphins still make the playoffs? They have a sub 1% chance of making the postseason. So technically they're not eliminated, but it doesn't look very good. So if they win this game, they have a sub 1% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose this game, they have a sub 1% chance of making the playoffs. But also, they're not technically out of it. And, you can always go in and try and play spoiler against the team like the Steelers. The Steelers are not that great. TJ Watt, no joke. Like Greg, I don't think you can really overstate the value that TJ Watt has to this defense and the team in general. Like they're just a really, really good pass rush with TJ Watt. But the secondary has not been good. The run defense hasn't been great. The one leg that they have to stand on is TJ Watt generating a pass rush and making life hard on an opposing quarterback, especially in the cold. So with him being out today, I think it is a really big deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, no doubt that him being out is a big deal. The Defensive Player of the Year award has more or less been locked up for a handful of weeks now. It has been Myles Garrett's award, as he is very likely to break the sacks record this year. But second and third in the odds throughout the year, it has been Micah Parsons. He's now out for the year as well. And then TJ Watt. So you're talking about one of the best defensive players in the league. I don't know exactly what his value was to the spread for this game, but it's probably at least a half point, which is usually not the case for any kind of defensive player.
Yeah. He's that good. I mean, Myles Garrett is obviously insane, but it's tough to say, man. It really is. And I'll tell you what, Jules Santana, Wright has taken charge of the second back role. Gordon is the short yardage back. You might be right. I don't want to say definitively, but last game you did actually see Jalen Wright getting those carries before Devon Achane got hurt. So it's possible. They tend to mix things up. Jalen Wright's been in the doghouse all year long. I mean, this guy's been a coach's decision inactive for more games than he hasn't. But yeah, he is getting some opportunities. He is. I believe he scored early last week as well, right? I think he did. Yeah,
Yep.
He scored on a 2-yard touchdown. So I could see it. Ryan, hammer Miami money line. I'm kind of leaning Miami today. Yeah. I don't know if I'd bet the money line, but Bet365 has plus 150. That actually looks pretty good to me for sure. Interesting call by Jeff, by the way, Greg. If the Browns had 10 wins, is Garrett in MVP conversation? I think he is.
This is such a weak field for MVP. Maybe it's so hard. It's so hard to say though, because we're so far removed from that scenario. Because there's also here's another part. What would Myles Garrett have had to have done for them to get to 10 wins, considering because what he's doing right now is not nearly enough. So presumably he'd have to be doing even more than he is right now.
I think in fairness, the argument wouldn't be that he has to do more. It's that the offensive play is even remotely competent, and it hasn't been. But no, I don't think he would be, because Justin CMC should be MVP. I couldn't disagree more. He's getting 48 touches per game. I think Matthew Stafford right now is definitively the MVP. Like there's nobody playing better. Now, yeah, he has Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, but if you watch any games that Stafford plays, like he's making preposterous throws, and these guys are helping him. Parkinson had a nasty catch yesterday. Puka had a sick one down the sideline. But no, I don't see how it could be anybody but Matthew Stafford right now. I really don't.
Yeah. So I don't know that's how I'm going to feel at the end of the year. But if the season ended right now, it would have to be Stafford. The question becomes, though, what happens with Stafford going forward? Because presumably Devontae Adams is done for the regular season. What is that going to do to Stafford's touchdown numbers? And then also, what happens if the Seahawks beat the Rams in a couple of weeks? Then the Rams are not going to not only not win the division, but they're going to be a fairly low playoff seed in that scenario also. So there's ways that this could go. Like right now, it has to be Stafford. I just don't know what it looks like if Stafford doesn't play as well the last few games of the year and they finish as like the 6th seed or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'm just saying, if it were right now, like if the season ended right now, got to be Stafford. But yeah, you could, right. They could fall out of favor. Who knows? I don't know what's going on with Devontae Adams though. But also McVay's statement was a little bit, it was a little more nuanced than when he said it didn't look good. He said, I certainly wouldn't rule him out quite yet, but it didn't look good. They play on Thursday. So
I don't know if he meant, when he said that, I don't know, did he mean for the season or just for this upcoming week?
The week.
Okay.
He said, we'll see what that means. I can't imagine that's good for Thursday with just a short amount of time, but I certainly wouldn't rule him out quite yet. So he wasn't even talking about the season. He was talking about the week. There's no chance Adams plays this week. I'd be shocked if he plays this week, but it's against Seattle. That's a huge, huge game, man. Anyway, let's get into this. Devon Achane to me is the best play on the slate, and I'm not going to mince words here. I went through all the reasons I believe that to be the case, especially with the cold weather. You're expected to have, I don't want to say significant winds, but some winds and gusts up to 20 miles per hour. So it is absolutely, to me, Devon Achane as the guy that I want the most of at captain and the most of at flex. He is expensive, undoubtedly. Like, this dude is very expensive today. Even at cap 19-2. This is one of the most expensive captains we've seen all season long. And I'll be honest, I think he deserves every single bit of it in a spot like this. I don't see a better play than Devon Achane today. As a matter of fact, I'd go as far to say I don't see anyone. This isn't to say I don't see any captains that could be as good, because, this is a salary cap game. but I don't see anyone that's even remotely as close, as good an overall play as Devon Achane today.
Yeah, I mean, you see that too in our data. We've got him showing up in 56.7% of lineups in the flex, 26% of lineups in the captain spot. So he is by far the most rostered player coming out of the data. And another thing to add to this too, it's who else are you paying up for? Who else are you paying up for? Devon Achane, 12.8 in the flex spot. So he's very expensive, but everybody else is somewhat cheap. You've got Jalen Waddle at 10.8, but the quarterbacks are $9,800 and $9,600. There just isn't that much opportunity cost to paying up for him. And look how much better he projects than everybody else as well. We got him for 20.37 fantasy points. The next best projected player, it's Aaron Rodgers at 15.94. So you're looking at a 5 fantasy point gap in our data between Achane and everybody else. It's such a big difference. It's really difficult to get away from him.
It's so tough. And there's a lot of things on the defensive side for the Steelers. Again, you're going to play Devon Achane anyway, but pay attention to that Derek Harmon news, because this guy really has been instrumental in stopping the run. All he did was log a limited practice on Saturday this week. Nothing on Thursday, nothing on Friday. So that if he's out, that hurts them. He's a first-round pick, and he's made a difference. So I'm looking at this spot, and it's hard to get away from Achane. I'd go a step further, though. In a really cold game like this, if Miami's defense can hold up enough, and it's not like you've seen this prolific offense from the Steelers either, credit the ground game. Jaylen Warren's been pretty good this year. And you've seen pretty good production out of Kenny Gainwell on top of that. They're getting these guys involved in the passing game, somehow more Gainwell than Jaylen Warren, but both of them are competent there. But really, I mean, you look at their offensive production, and unless you're facing Cincinnati, they haven't done that much. If this game does kind of play true to the total, which is 41.5, you could see guys like Jalen Wright getting worked in as well. And I'm not opposed to having some lineups with Devon Achane and Jalen Wright in there.
Yeah. So last week, this is going to go back to the question that we had, or not the question, the statement about Jalen Wright being the backup now. So the snap count itself is not anything that's going to be replicable because Devon Achane got hurt last week, but the snap count is relevant in terms of who is next in the pecking order. So Achane goes down last week. In his absence, 52% of the snaps go to Jalen Wright, and you got 25% of the snaps going to Ollie Gordon. So I feel pretty good that Jalen Wright, despite to what you had said, which was completely true, Lofty, that earlier in the year, he was in the doghouse. Just based on what we saw last week, he's ahead of Ollie Gordon on the depth chart.
Feels like it. Absolutely feels like it. And I had a decent amount of Jalen Wright in best ball, and that didn't work out. A ton of Devin Neal as well, and he ends up getting hurt. I thought, man, I threaded that needle. Obviously, all luck. I needed Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara to go down, but it didn't matter anyway because he got hurt. But no, I think the backfield for Miami is – how much is Jalen Wright?
So Jalen Wright, who is showing up in some lineups, or Ollie Gordon's not showing up in anything, but Jalen Wright's at an unplayable price point. Yeah, he's 6,800, which
never mind.
Pricing came out under the assumption that Achane may not play this week.
Yeah, never mind.
Got priced up. So as a result, Jalen Wright, he did show up in 2% of lineups, but he's not really playable at this price point.
Oh my God. He had 24 for one. That's crazy. That sucks. I mean, it's just really difficult to get there. Even Ollie Gordon, which is a shame because this could be a game where they run a lot and do a lot of damage on the ground, but it's going to be difficult. I mean, the only question is, do you play any of them just knowing that the field's not going to go there? It feels really tough at that price point. Even if he scores and has like 20 rushing yards and a touchdown, that might still not be enough at 6,800.
Yeah, I don't imagine. I mean, you see in the Sims, he was showing up in 3% of lineups. No, not somebody I want to prioritize at all. If I was playing 20 lineups, Jalen Wright would be in 0 of them.
What about the quarterbacks today, starting with Tua, who, again, the narrative is just he can't play in the cold. And yeah, there have been some games where Tua in the cold has been pretty bad. Also pretty brutal matchups and like super cold with crazy wind chill. I don't know. It's one of those spots where I'm not as opposed to it as I think other people are going to be. Not at captain, but at flex, I'll happily get to some Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, for sure. We saw last night when Emac and I were doing the show, nobody wanted to play JJ. I mean, nobody's relative because he was still, 30 something percent owned. But in the chat, people were, how do I fade JJ McCarthy today? And what we were trying to say is you don't. Quarterbacks generally tend to outscore a lot of other positions in Showdown. JJ McCarthy was reasonably priced and was also reasonably owned. And everything's kind of the same for Tua today. He doesn't project for as many fantasy points as JJ McCarthy did last night, but that's also just because the game environment is different. That was a Cowboys-Vikings game that had a 47.5 point total and juiced towards the over. So everything's relative to the other players in the game. Tua for today still does project as one of the higher guys on the slate in terms of fantasy points. There are other guys that I certainly like, Achane or like Waddle, that I want to play over him, but yeah, he's still a quarterback priced under 10K in a showdown slate. I don't want anything to do with him or Rodgers in the captain spot or the MVP spot on FanDuel, but there's certainly good flex options. And Tua right now is only 30% on. That's fairly low ownership.
Definitely. For a slate like this, 30% that at flex, I'm pretty shocked by that, especially knowing that Rodgers at the exact same price or $200 more is 46. I don't really get that. I don't really understand that Rodgers. I mean, what I do get that, they're favored at home and all of that stuff, but I don't see much of a difference between Aaron Rodgers and Tua Tagovailoa in this game. I really don't. And maybe it's the fact that you have HM, but the Steelers aren't afraid to run Waddle a lot or Warren a lot. They're not afraid to give the ball to Gainwell. Rodgers picks up a lot of easy yards throwing to his running backs, but what's to say that you can't do the same thing with Tua Tagovailoa to Devon Achane? I don't know. Rodgers three of his last four games, 161 passing yards, 116, 117, 284 last game against Baltimore, but 203, 219, five straight games with one or fewer touchdown passes, no rushing upside. So when I look at Tua, you're like, all right, well, what about him? Yeah, the numbers are so similar on these guys. The only thing is that they didn't need to throw the ball against the Jets, right? And he was fine. They didn't need to throw the ball against the Saints, and he wasn't good, but whatever, who cares in that spot. Against Washington, that was, I think, the Germany game. He was 14 of 20, 171 yards, no touchdowns. And then the Buffalo game, they routed them. He had 2 interceptions, but he was 15 of 21 for 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. I guess what I'm saying is you haven't really needed him to do much. And maybe you do today, maybe you don't. But I could see this being a game where he picks up easy yards on Devon Achane dump-offs, like checkdowns. I just don't see a big difference between Tua and Rodgers to where they should be getting, 16% difference in ownership.
Yeah, so you do have higher props on Aaron Rodgers. You've got Tua's passing prop is anywhere from like 192 to 195. Rodgers' passing prop is anywhere from like 209 to 217. So Rodgers' passing yardage prop is about 20 yards higher, but neither of these quarterbacks really have much rushing upside. So you're looking at a difference in projection of less than 1 fantasy point, just based on props. It would be less than 1 fantasy point. And you're looking at Aaron Rodgers being about 50% owned compared to Tua being about 30% owned. And on top of it too, here's something I'm going to disagree with our data on. Aaron Rodgers is 10% owned in the captain spot, and we're getting about even to the field with him. So Rodgers is nearly twice as owned as Tua. That is way too wide of a gap.
I think so too. Yeah, and good call on the captain spot too. I think we both agree. We're not in love with either of these guys at captain, but yeah, just seeing that huge difference in price or in ownership to me really stands out. So yeah, you talk about Devon Achane, we get into the quarterbacks. Then we got to talk about the running backs on the Pittsburgh side. It's Jaylen Warren. It's Kenneth Gainwell. It's really been tough. It looked like earlier in the year, Warren was about to run away with this.
Mhm.
And then he was a late scratch essentially in that London game against, I think it was Cleveland. No, was it Minnesota? Cleveland? I don't know. It might have been Minnesota. Doesn't matter. I think it was the Vikings. Whatever. And Kenny Gainwell ended up having a good game. Then they kind of just went to a split after that. And Kenneth Gainwell's opportunities in the passing game have been so significant lately that, in a game where you're going to have some wind gusts, where it's going to be freezing cold, and this guy's got 8, 6, 3, and 7 targets over his last 4 games, and he gets targeted in the red zone, and he gets goal line carries. I think Gainwell's kind of a tough guy to ignore at times.
Snap counts over the last 3 weeks, very, very split. You've got Jaylen Warren the last 3 games, 50, 56, and 50% of snaps. And then Kenneth Gainwell, 51, 42, and 48% of snaps. And then, Caleb Johnson continues to basically be uninvolved in the offense overall. But it is pretty much a dead split in workload between Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. And to what you said, based on how each of them have been utilized, this kind of does profile as a more favorable game for Gainwell, with him being more of the pass catching back as of late. So you look at the price tags on these guys, Gainwell at $7K, Jaylen Warren at $9K. I'm more inclined to play Gainwell at his price point than Warren at his. And then the ownership is about the same, 35% versus 36%. You're getting the $2,000 in salary savings on Gainwell.
Yeah. Both of these guys look good to me, but we're also getting a lot of each of them too, right? I mean, if you sort by our exposure, we have plenty Kenneth Gainwell and plenty of Jaylen Warren. Yeah, look at that. We've
got Warren in 43% of lineups, Gainwell in 36%. So they're both 2 of the 4 most rostered players that we have in the flex spot.
Would you play both of them together?
Yeah, especially in a game like this where it's going to be low scoring. So a lot of times on games like this for Showdown, it comes down to just, did you have the touchdowns? Because if the ball isn't going to be moved a lot, there isn't a ton of yardage to be had, then it's just a game that finishes, like 14-10 or something like that. It's just, did you get the guys who crossed the goal line? And there's enough workload available for Gainwell and Warren for them each to be competent on a game like this. I don't think there's a scenario where both of them score like 20 plus fantasy points, but it's also so far from what's needed in this game.
I don't see that playing out, but I do see there being a potential scenario just being a really cold game where neither team, I don't think, has, a ton of trust in the quarterbacking, that you just see a lot of just a heavy run approach. And the Dolphins, to their credit, their run defense has been better. You remember early in the season, this run defense was, so bad. Really, really, really bad. But then I say, all right, well, okay, they faced the Jets and held them to nothing. They faced the Saints, but they gave up 3 games ago, 172 rushing yards to Washington, 150 to Baltimore. They're still not great on the ground. It's just they're not giving up 200 rushing yards per game anymore. So, yeah, I really do like all of the running backs in this game outside of Wright, but I like him. I just don't like his price. Mm-hmm. So that kind of sucks. But aside from that, the passing game is where things get a little bit difficult. Jalen Waddle. What do we do with a Jalen Waddle type today?
Yeah, so
that price is so high.
Here's where we have to make a decision, right? So the only 2 expensive guys that we have on the slate are Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle. And we've got Achane projected for 7 more fantasy points. So you have to make a decision here. But to me, just based on our data and projections, the answer is so clearly Devon Achane. As a result, we get overweights to field on Achane, Waddle only showing up in 20% of top lineups. If I'm submitting my lineups right now, I'm playing a bunch of Achane. Waddle is not, a fade or anything like that. But if you're going to be overweight to the field to Achane, you have to be underweight to the field to Waddle, unless you're just doing something crazy with punts on the low end. But I'm most inclined just be overweight to Achane, underweight to Waddle. And that's the opportunity cost, playing more of Achane. Based on our projections, I'm very comfortable with making that decision.
Why in the world is Waddle $1,400 more expensive than DK Metcalf and essentially getting the same ownership? That to me makes no sense whatsoever, like at all. And the Miami Dolphins corners have played better of late, but still, you're talking about a guy in DK Metcalf that is the clear number one still, right? He's not JSN target share style wide receiver. I get that. But you're looking at his last handful of games, 12, 5, 8, 8, 7. But it goes past that. $1,400 less expensive. Neither quarterback is all that impressive in a spot like this. When you look at a guy in Jalen Waddle, once in a while he'll get a rushing attempt or something like that. But this dude is not a big-time target share player. Devon Achane is the offense. Now, is that to say that Waddle can't have a big game? No, he's still a good player. But seriously, and I hate to just be like, look at the game logs, Greg, but sometimes that is important. It's not just that he's not getting targets, because if you look at his target share, right, like his targets in relation to his attempts, his target share actually is significant. But that only matters so much if your quarterback's throwing 20 to 25 times a game. Would you rather have a 20% target share on a guy that throws 40 times per game, or a 30% target share on a guy that throws 20 times per game?
The other part of this too is Jalen Waddle is more of a high floor than a high ceiling guy. And that's really problematic when he's $10,800. DK Metcalf is the inverse. He's a low floor, but a high ceiling guy, because his targets typically end up being more downfield and he's more big play upside than what Jalen Waddle has. So if you do look at the projections that we have between the two, they project nearly identically. 13.5 fantasy points for Metcalf, 13.6 fantasy points for Waddle. Okay, that's fine by me, but you've also got DK Metcalf is $1,400 less expensive. And I think that Jalen Waddle, if we're just looking at like standard deviations and range of outcomes, he's very likely to be somewhere around his fantasy point projection, whereas DK Metcalf over time is probably going to average his fantasy point projection, but it's going to come with like a 22 fantasy point game, a 4 fantasy point game, a 21 fantasy point game, an 8 fantasy point game. So he's all over the place, but that kind of upside to me makes him more likely to be in a winning lineup than what Jalen Waddle is going to be. And Waddle's safer, but Metcalf for tournaments has much more of a ceiling.
Yeah, I just, they're so similar to me though, honestly. And I that's why I'd go to Metcalf. There just hasn't been enough passing volume in the Miami offense for me to like it. If you look at the other pass catchers for the Dolphins, right? Waddle's 10-8. You have to drop down $5,000 until you get to Malik Washington. And Malik Washington, I mean, you want to talk about a low floor, of course. But he's seeing what? He's getting some targets, some involvement. At the very least, this guy is on the field. I don't love him, but I don't think he's all that much worse. Obviously, he's not nearly as talented as Jalen Waddle, and Waddle has a higher ceiling for sure. But Washington will be out there probably 60% of the time. You get down to your Nick Westbrook Akinas and your Cedric Wilsons and your D. Eskridges and those guys, it gets pretty gross. But I don't know, like there's other guys that exist here that I think I'd rather take shots on that are just super cheap. Darnell Washington's $2,600. Pat Freiermuth, it sucks to see what's become of him because I still think he's good, but he's $3K flat. Look down at some of these other guys, and I think that's where some of the value comes from.
Yeah, especially if we're going to prioritize Achane, at least to some extent, we're going to have to make some considerations about going a little bit cheaper with some of the pass catchers or other players. So Malik Washington, he's got a little bit of upside at $5,800 just because it does seem like the Dolphins draw up a lot of kind of like designer plays for him when they get down around the goal line, and he is explosive. We've seen him return a punt for a touchdown this year. At $5,800, though, it's pretty hard for me to prioritize that because you're relying on a touchdown. And even now he's at a price point where earlier in the year, Lofty, when you and I did some of the showdown shows that involved the Dolphins, Malik Washington would be like 2,000 or 2,800. Be like, hey, we're good if he scores a touchdown. Now you need a touchdown and a little bit more from him at this price point. So Malik Washington, he's going to be kind of hard for me to get to. I would rather play, like you mentioned, guys like Let's see, scrolling down a little bit here. Yeah, Washington is $2,600. He's showing up in 18% of lineups right now. Even somebody like Jonnu Smith, he's only 10 or 11% owned at $2,800. I'll take my chances on these guys and save a few $1,000s worth of salary. There's nobody who really shows up in a ton of lineups that's super cheap. We get a little bit of Dulcich at the bottom here. But I do think that some of these guys in like the 2-3K range are pretty interesting in this game.
So do I. And even if you don't think they're interesting, you're going to have to play some of them, especially with that Achane price point. But no, Greg Dulcich is fine. You know, even in the 2 games since Darren Waller returned, you're still looking at 5 targets for Dulcich, 6 going to Darren Waller. And if you look at like the snaps and the routes run data and all of that stuff, Julian Hill's run 23 routes over those 2 games. And you actually, hold on, not right. That's 2024. Caught that just in time. I was like, Jonnu Smith, that's weird. Greg Dulcich, 23 routes. Darren Waller, 33. Julian Hill, 9. So they're all out there. Julian Hill is the least enticing, even though he's getting some snaps, because he's not running routes and he's not being targeted, even though he's playing 50+% of snaps. To me, it is Darren Waller and Greg Dulcich that would make the most sense out there. And quite frankly, if you're getting Greg Dulcich at the price point that he's at, which is $1,600 compared to Darren Waller being $4,400, while I don't hate Darren Waller, and clearly Tua Tagovailoa has been inclined to look his way once they get inside the 20, cold day, touchdown equity is probably down across the board here. Dulcich at 16, almost a $3,000 discount, to me is actually pretty good.
Yeah. And all these guys are showing up, not a ton, but to some extent in the Sims. 12% Dulcich, 18% Darnell Washington, 20% Jonnu Smith, 18% Pat Freiermuth. But my favorite value options overall, Lofty, some people in the chat are bringing this up as well, with the potential of the cold weather creating, some amounts of variance here. The defenses are very inexpensive, and they're not all that popular as of right now either. The Dolphins at $3,600 are 17% owned, and then the Steelers, they're 4K and 22% owned. So those to me are also 2 very viable options on the low end in the event this turns into a lower scoring game, which I do think this is more likely to be a low scoring game than a high scoring game.
Oh yeah, I'm all about both defenses in a spot like this. Both of them. If TJ Watt was playing, I might if TJ Watt was playing, my highest owned like spot overall out that might honestly be the Steelers defense. Yeah, I could absolutely see that being the case, but I still like them. I just don't trust them nearly as much. Their price though, and I think you mentioned this, the price on these defenses for such a low total game, and I'm not talking like Titans, Cleveland low scoring, which ended up soaring over, but those price points are very, very cheap. 42, 41 and a half total game. Yeah, I'm with you. And you know what? Kickers too. It is cold, and I think a lot of people are going to be kind of put off by something like that, but it was cold in a lot of games yesterday, and the kickers seemed no worse for wear in a lot of those. Maybe you're not kicking 60-yarders out there in 16-degree temperatures. It clearly impacts the flight of the ball, but I'll happily get to some of the kickers here today if it just ends up being a game that's played in between the 20s.
Younghoe Koo, I don't think he could kick in any he was somebody who sucked yesterday and cost the Giants a game or won them a game, depending on your outlook of them trying to get the top overall pick in the draft.
Maybe that's why they signed him.
Yeah, they're just trying to lose. That I still can't get over that kick attempt from last week where he just – I know it officially didn't, or it was 2 weeks ago because the Giants were on the bye last week.
Dug his foot into the dirt
and missed the kick by like 6 feet. It was so far off.
It's so I feel like he has the yips. I really do. He used to be good in Atlanta.
Could be. It's possible, but boys, he sucked for the Giants so far this season.
He sucked for everyone over the past like year and a half, 2 years. I'm telling you, Younghoe Koo used to be decent.
Yeah.
Kicker feels like a position where you could so easily get the yips and not be able to return to form.
The other part of it too is there's such high expectations for kickers. Like there's an actual statement. Don't go for it. Take the points. Under the assumption is the points are free. Don't just take the points. Why would you go for it on fourth down? Just take the 3 points. There's no consideration that kickers might end up missing it. So you have some of these years where also the sample size is really, really low. Kickers might attempt, 20 to 30 field goals an entire year. So you have a season where a guy misses a couple of extra field goals and it tanks their overall field goal percentage. They end up looking a lot worse. And then to your point about the yips, then all of a sudden there's all this public pressure on them. Every single time these guys kick, unless you're a really established kicker, your job is on the line every single time you step on the field. That's a very high pressure situation.
Big time, dude. It's all on you. It's all on you. I think it's the yips. But besides the point, how much kickers are we getting to?
Let's see. We've got Boswell. Yeah, about even with the field on Boswell. Overweights the field on Patterson. Boswell pulling 27.5% ownership. We're getting him in 27% of lineups. Patterson 24% on. We're getting him in 30% of lineups. So relative to ownership, we're getting to more of Patterson, but we're getting a chunk of both the kickers.
Also, Boswell's been around for so long and kicked in cold weather that you become a little bit more comfortable with a spot like that for sure. I think so, at least. Patterson, who knows? I'd be lying to you if I told you I need dick about kicking, but I know Chris Boswell's been pretty good in the cold for a pretty long time. So what other guys haven't we? Here's one. If you're just looking to get super weird bottom of the barrel type stuff, again, I do think you'll need to do some of that today if you're captaining guys like Devon Achane. But if that happens to be the case, Adam Thielen played 48% of snaps last game. 48. All right. Now, Roman Wilson, former second-round draft pick, was inactive for that game. Coach's decision. They've tried to get him going. It hasn't worked. It's disappointing. I thought he had the potential to be pretty good. They bring Adam Thielen in, right? They exhume him from the grave, and here he is. And he had one target for 4 yards. He did absolutely nothing. But in relation to the other guys out there, right, you have DK Metcalf, who just plays a lot. He's the clear number one. There's no doubt about it. The problem is how much 12 personnel they're going to run too. Like you're going to have a lot of spots where there's multiple tight ends on the field. What do you make of the other wide receivers on the Pittsburgh Steelers not named DK Metcalf?
In general, don't really want to play them. So we did see the snap counts last week. Adam Thielen played the second most of any of the other wide receivers behind DK Metcalf. Metcalf played 83% of snaps. He had Thielen play 48%. Like you said, that led to a one target and a total of 4 receiving yards. So this is a team that they just kind of utilize pass catchers differently. DK Metcalf is the only wide receiver who regularly gets work. Then you get passing game work for the running backs. And then you get 3 tight ends they throw the football to. And as far as where the other wide receivers go on the pecking order, let's say Adam Thielen is actually the number 2 wide receiver in terms of snap counts. That still might mean that in terms of targets, he's behind DK Metcalf, Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, Darnell Washington, Jonnu Smith, and Pat Freiermuth. There's a realistic chance that the second wide receiver on the Steelers is like 7th in terms of order of targets.
Yeah, it's gross. Like you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8. This is terrible. You had 9 players run 10 plus routes last week. 9, including Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Good luck. Metcalf had 33. Freiermuth ran 22. Like Freiermuth to me is just the type of guy that I'll always play in these spots. Always. Jonnu ran 12. This guy appears to be falling out of favor quick. He's $2,800 now. He's been virtually uninvolved. Like if I really had, and Darnell Washington ran 10. Gainwell 19, Calvin Austin 16, Warren 15. What an absolute mess this is. I'm serious. This is a travesty if you're trying to figure this out for a showdown slate. I'm just gonna end up sprinkling a bunch of these guys in. Have a lot of Warren, have a lot of Wright, have plenty of DK Metcalf, and then let the chips fall where they may. It may just be an ownership game too. Like, let's say Darnell Washington ends up being lower owned, or Freiermuth ends up being lower owned. We get closer to lock, and one of those guys is just less than everyone. But I don't know. The field is pretty sharp, and you look at that Freiermuth and Washington ownership, pretty similar. No surprise, Jonnu Smith is down, seeing his route participation crater week over week. Calvin Austin might be the guy. 8% ownership at 3,800, but it's tough.
Yeah, so the other thing to keep in mind, too, about some of the numbers, that Darnell Washington did leave last week's game with a concussion, which I don't even know how that's possible. Somebody hit him with a shovel? Like, how do you concuss somebody who's that gigantic
of a human being? A train?
Yeah, he got hit by a car on the way to the game and got a concussion.
I'm not sure a car would be enough.
Well, yeah, it was a big car though. It was a truck.
Yeah, it's like an old Cadillac.
Yeah or an actual like a FedEx or something. It was something big, something big.
Right, because if you're in like a Nissan Leaf and you hit Darnell Washington, you might not make it.
Yeah, it's gonna fuck up your car pretty good.
You might not live.
Darnell Washington might check on the car and be like, "Hey, sorry, is your car okay?" Because he hit him in the middle of the street. So even some of those numbers from last week, breaking down the tight ends, it doesn't even really do justice to how much they slant their offensive play towards the tight ends, because Darnell Washington only played 29% of the snaps, misses part of the game with the concussion. So
I missed that. Yeah.
He's still, for me, number one in the pecking order in terms of tight ends to go to here. I'm going to go Darnell Washington 1, Freiermuth 2, and Jonnu Smith 3. I will be getting exposure to all three of them, though, on the low end, but that's my order of priority.
You know what else should be an order of priority? Going over to Tails and getting in on some action with us today. I'm very much looking forward to this slate. I genuinely think there's going to be good betting opportunities. Because, whenever you get these type of games, I just think a lot of times you have less efficient markets and less efficient lines. When you're talking about guys like Adams and Nakua, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, those can be tough spots, man. They really can. And you look here, and we've already got, look at this, our boy DFS and Donuts, the biggest guy on Tails right now. 10,000 simulations, a Monday Night Football game between Steelers and Dolphins. What's he have? Oh, he went with a little four-legger on some alts, with an alt Devon Achane, an alt Cal. I love that Calvin Austin receiving prop, by the way. I actually like that quite a bit. One-click tail this baby right here. Look at that. Find the best odds no matter where it is. So you want it on FanDuel, click tail parlay, add it straight into your bet slip. Is there anything more beautiful than that? The first thing I'm doing after this show is over, I'm recording the betting video for the OddsShopper channel. I'm going to throw some bets up on Tails. All of my bets go there first, and all the bets you never find anywhere else go there first for free. Same with Greg. All his bankroll challenge exclusively there. You've been hitting some nice parlays. You got 2 nice parlays for NBA, playing a nice little script-based SGP in those. So make sure to check Greg's stuff out. Everybody, link in the description. Give us a follow. Leave us. Appreciate you guys leaving those ratings and reviews yesterday on the Tails app. Yeah. So anyway, check it out. If you haven't, download the app. Goes a long way. You're simply not going to know what you were doing without Tails once you download it. I believe that, Greg. It's an awesome app.
Yeah, and then Lofty also mentioned my bankroll building content that I put up there. I'm about to, right after the show ends, post the results out from yesterday. But starting bankroll from the start of the year, it's up about 2.5x now from the start of the season using the OddsShopper Portfolio EV tool. So if you guys want to check out those, I've been posting a handful of bets every day to Tails. And yeah, it's started the year kind of flat, but over the last couple of weeks, it's really, really started to take off and have some big growth, kind of like what it had last year.
So yeah, check it out. Come hang out with us. We're going to have some great bets for today, and I'm looking forward to it. Gibbs, does us no good when you basically say play everybody. I don't think that's what we've done at all. I think we prioritized Devon Achane. We talked about how between Tua and Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers feels like he's getting way over-owned, comparatively speaking. Neither look good at captain. Both look fine at flex. We like Tua a bit more. Talked about that Jalen Waddle price point compared to DK Metcalf. I would say that DK Metcalf, put this pretty explicitly, looks like the better play today. But if you're asking us to give you definitive takes on which one of Malik Washington, Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth, and Jonnu Smith are better, it's a showdown slate. Like you have to play it based on the way you think the game is going to go. If I have a spot where I'm getting to Aaron Rodgers at captain, in all likelihood, I'm going to be going Calvin Austin ahead of Malik Washington. On these showdowns, when you've got 9 different players that ran double-digit routes last week for Pittsburgh, just be lying to you, being like, no, I think the only guy here is Darnell Washington. I agree with Greg. He's the best of the cheap guys down there, but I do like Freiermuth as well.
That's also why when we're going through the different price points, I talk about who my favorite is, right? So I said, like, all right, here's relative to ownership, what I think of some of these tight ends, but I said, Darnell Washington's my favorite. So the idea is supposed to signify that if you guys are just building one lineup and you're picking one of these people, then you'd come away being like, oh, that's who my favorite is.
Yeah. And Jeremiah, if you aren't familiar, I think if you aren't familiar with DFS, then all this sounds like Chinese. Yeah, sure. I mean, sure. Like if I were watching a video on how to build a propulsion system, I would not understand.
I would watch it. I would watch it now.
Yeah, now I would. Like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. But no, like Timothy Freiermuth, 50-1, 2 touchdowns tonight. Godspeed, sir. Anyone we haven't talked about yet? I feel like we covered everything pretty efficiently.
We didn't talk about the captain spot, but otherwise, yeah, we hit on all the guys for the flex.
Yeah, I mean, I think at captain right now, Achane, not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but the volume, the efficiency, the absence of TJ Watt, potentially the absence of Derek Harmon, the cold weather, there's nothing that makes me not want to have a ton of Devon Achane. But the only one that actually, so I agree that Warren would be my second favorite captain. I would leapfrog DK Metcalf to third here as order of preference goes for me. I would put Gainwell fourth, and then I would put Rodgers fifth. I am also not opposed to these defenses at captain today, given the specific spot with the Dolphins and Steelers. But for me, my top 4 would actually be Achane, Warren, Metcalf, and then Gainwell.
Yeah. One other thing too, I said this at the top, but if the slate was starting right now with this ownership going Aaron Rodgers, I would just have an exposure cap at 0% of him. I don't want to play him in the multiplier spot at all. He doesn't even have a ton of passing upside this year, let alone a complete lack of rushing upside. So with him actually being popular in the captain spot, that's somebody who I would not want to have.
Any captains that we aren't getting that you would be all right getting more of?
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have, it depends what you mean by not getting. So, like, we've got marginal exposure to the defense. I think the defenses are pretty playable in the captain spots today. So the 2 of them at really low ownership. And then also, let's see, Darnell Washington. Washington would be another one if I want to go really, really cheap and give myself the possibility to make a Darnell Washington lineup that then includes, let's say, in the flex spots, like Achane, Waddle with Tua, and then maybe like DK Metcalf and Rodgers, whoever else fits. I do think that Darnell Washington also is playable for very cheap in the captain spot at 1% ownership.
What about the idea of getting to any of these like crazy cheap options, or even just guys like a Freiermuth or a Dulcich or the kickers or anything like that?
I mean, to me, Darnell Washington is that guy. He's 3,900 in the captain spot, and he's only 1% owned. He's actually cheaper than Freiermuth. So, yeah, Washington is that crazy guy for me.
Okay, fair enough. Also, there was something very cool that happened yesterday, and we had a $60K winner on the showdown slate. How about that? 60K winner using the Sims tools on the showdown slate. Just took down, this is Jordan, just took down first place for 60K on FanDuel using the stochastic Sims. You absolutely love to see it, man. Some other wins scattered across the board as well. GPP, Johnny, Billy, Tony Triggers. Oh, hey, Tony, you've been crushing lately. But yeah, I'm very excited that we got another showdown 60K winner. It's been an insane season for the stochastic users. There's avatars that have been littered across the leaderboard. I have a good feeling about tonight's slate. I think this slate is going to be populated up top by this beautiful collection and array of stochastic avatars. And if you guys want to check the tools out for yourself, whether it's the single lineup sim, the sims themselves, all of the data that we have, projections, ownership, projected stats, optimal rate, boom score, you name it, post-contest sims, late swap, links down there in the description if you wanted to try these tools out for yourself. It's been an awesome year, man. And to see somebody grab another 60K yesterday in these massive, large field tournaments that are so difficult to take down. And when you're getting 60K up top on a showdown, that's a pretty unique lineup, I must say, with JJ McCarthy at captain, Jalen Naylor action. And I believe, actually, Greg, I want to check. I could be wrong here. I'm pretty sure that this may have been a 4-2 Cowboys with McCarthy and Naylor, but McCarthy at captain, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I believe it's 3-3.
Was it? Okay.
Because you had to both the kickers last night.
Oh, that's right. There was the other. Is that the other kicker that's covered up?
Yeah, it's Will Riker that's covered up.
Okay. Even so.
By the way, sorry, but we've got some news very quickly before we head out here. Adam Schefter just tweeted, Jaylen Warren dealing with an illness. He's now questionable to play tonight. So obviously this could throw a wrench into it. We'll have to get an update on Jaylen Warren. But if he's out, Kenneth Gainwell looks even better. And then Caleb Johnson potentially comes into play as well.
If he's out, Kenny Gainwell becomes the best play on the slate.
Yeah. Caleb Johnson, 2,400, by the way.
Yeah. I don't even know if I'd want much. I'm with you at 2,400. He's viable, but also a guy you want to talk about doghouse, right? We talked about Jalen, right? Caleb Johnson has been someone that they really don't want to give the ball to all that often at all.
No,
he'd be in play.
He had a fumble on, I think it was a kick return, like week 2 or week 3. And then they were just like, this guy will not see the light of the day for months after this. Like Tomlin already wasn't, this is somebody who you never know these things for sure, but just the way it played out, I could feel pretty confidently. He was not a Mike Tomlin pick. He was a front office pick. And Mike Tomlin has been begrudgingly like, all right, we'll give this guy some opportunities. And he has failed every opportunity that he's gotten to this point. Even where they put him on kick return, he immediately ends up fumbling a kick. So
bad.
With that said, though, for a one-game slate at $2,400, and this is a pretty big if because we just got this information, we would need Jaylen Warren to be out. But in the event that Jaylen Warren's out, Caleb Johnson, we go from somebody who's in no lineups for me right now to some lineups.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it. Gainwell would go from someone that's in some lineups for me to all lineups.
Yeah, agreed.
Like if I ended up with 100% Gainwell if Warren doesn't play, I don't think I'd touch a single thing, honestly. At that price point, how do you not play Gainwell everywhere? He becomes the best point per dollar play on the entire site, hands down.
Yeah, easily 7K.
Yeah. So there you have it. Anyway, you guys are the best, man. Appreciate you hanging out as always. Take a second before you leave. Hit that thumbs up. Atone for your sins. Subscribe. If you've already left a rating and a review for us on the Tails app, appreciate you for that. It's seriously the easiest way you can help us right now. It only takes a couple minutes. But yeah, aside from that, that's what we got going. Gibbs, all good, man. So I wasn't trying to give you guys a hard time. I actually appreciate the info. It's a guessing game at the end of the day because no one can predict the future. Downloaded Tails app with a 5-star review. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, what I'm saying is we try to pride ourselves, though. The reason I mentioned that, because I know Greg's the same way. We're not big fans of shows where they just say that everybody's in play and then victory lap it when you mention the player for 30 seconds. We do genuinely try. Showdown slates are just a unique animal where once you get down to that 3K range, that 2K range, some guys will look better than the others, Greg, but there's also going to be times where all of them are like 1 to 3 target guys, and you're just hoping that you can hit the moving target.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So, all good, brother. We'll see you guys back here tonight, live before lock for NFL. You on live before lock for NBA?
No, not for NBA today, but I will be tomorrow. Or actually, tomorrow's only the one game slate, so I don't even know. I don't even know what the tomorrow schedule is going to be yet. What I want to do for you guys is we've got a bunch of new features added to the tools. I want to record tutorials on how to use everything and get that up.
Oh, dude, you got to get something up for the groups.
Yeah.
You're going to do that today? That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's something I'm going to be working on this week. That's a priority for me right now.
Yeah, great idea. And we'll make sure that everybody – we should also have like an article form too with screenshots in there and stuff to just send. Some people prefer it more visually formatted, but I think the video will get the job done. It just sucks the way YouTube houses their content. It drives me nuts. Like there's no simple way to find stuff sometimes. We'll make it work. Anyway, thanks, guys. We'll see you back here for the next one. Bye-bye.